It's a big honor also for me to do the presentation about the research that we did in the Netherlands for this illicit public, because also a little bit exciting, because maybe I'm gonna swear in church a little bit sometimes, because you are all fire instructors and all into fire safety engineering, and maybe this is for me the test case whether our Dutch vision is also has support internationally. And when you see the title of my presentation, it is a refreshed view on firefighting. So I'm a little bit surprised that, and also happy of course that you all came back, because it means that probably you are going to hear nothing new in this afternoon. So you are going to listen for 60 minutes to me and probably go out and say, well, we didn't learn anything new. Hopefully I can refresh some things that you forgot, and that is probably the most important thing of my presentation, that I think that we forgot a lot of things of the theory that we learned when we started to be a firefighter. Like Stefan said, I'm a professor of fire safety science in the Fire Service Academy in the Netherlands, and every time when I say that I'm a professor, it feels a little bit awkward, because a professor is supposed, in my opinion, supposed to know everything. But that is not the case with this professor, because this professor knows that there is a lot of knowledge in my country, all over the world, and all the knowledge together will be probably all the knowledge there is. And I always use the metaphor, if the knowledge that you have is inside a sphere, then all the knowledge that you don't have is outside the sphere, yes? True? So the surface of the sphere is like that, where you feel what you know and what you don't know. So the more you know, the bigger the sphere, and the bigger the surface is, the surface between the things that you don't know and you know. So the more you know you don't know. Yes? True or not? So what does it say about a person who thinks he knows everything? A point, yes? A dot is it, yes. Okay, so I know that there is a lot of people also in my country that know a lot about fires, a lot about firefighting. And when I was a fire officer in Amsterdam, you know, is the capital of the Netherlands, yes? Mm-hmm. For the Americans, yes? It's the capital of the Netherlands. Not Copenhagen, but Amsterdam, yes? Amsterdam is so that, of course, we have a very big fire service, and I was a fire officer there. I put out a lot of fires. Some of these buildings burned down to the ground because of me, but I didn't know that at that time. I learned that when I became a professor, because after 5 years of being a professor, I learned a lot, and I learned that I did not know a lot when I was a fire officer. Of course, I learned a lot of theory, and the theory I never used, because I did like Peter did. I did what my predecessors taught me to do in certain cases, and I did not learn to use my theory. That is one of the big conclusions that I can draw after 4 years of professorship. I learned a lot, and even every day I learn new things that I thought would be different. So this is maybe the core of my presentation. What I'm going to do is, first I will show you a little bit of the Netherlands. Not of course what it looks like and that kind of things, and the difference between the Dutch and the Holland and the Netherlands, but about how the Dutch firefighters think. When you talk to them, that's what they would tell you, the beliefs, about the beliefs and that kind of things. Then some of our big research projects. Of course I cannot go into detail for every research project, but I will just take out the highlights. And the highlights are then in the conclusion in the secret yellow, the refreshed view on firefighter. And then if I have still time, if the professor Stefan says that I will give you a preview of some projects that we are working on. Is that okay for you? Yes? Okay. You're still here, so. Okay, let me introduce a little bit about the Netherlands. So why did we do a research? Where did it start? I think for the Netherlands it started in 2008. Maybe 1 year later than in Ottawa. Because we had a fire in a boat warehouse. There were boats inside. There was a small fire in the rear of that boat shed. Firefighters went in, 3 of them died. And we did an investigation. And we looked around a little bit. And it was the first time that we saw that that fire was not the only one. We had a lot of that kind of fires in warehouses at that time with a lot of smoke, but nothing happened there, so we didn't share that knowledge. Even in the United Kingdom there was some kind of fire. Also firefighters died in that fire, and that's when we thought like, hey, this fire was not an incident. This was an example. And not only because that kind of fires were happening more often all over the world, but also because the way we acted at that fire was like everybody would do. Every firefighter in the Netherlands would have gone in that warehouse to put out the fire. So it could have happened anywhere in the Netherlands, which means that we had a system error. It was not something that somebody did wrong, but it was a system error in our system. And that's why we said that this incident of this fire could have been avoided, but it was not to be blamed to anybody. And we concluded that there is something wrong in our system. So one of the things that was then very clear was that our fire chief said we don't want any firefighter deaths during fires anymore. So we are going to find out how we are going to do that, and we developed the quadrant model. Who did ever hear about the quadrant model? Yeah. Oh, some people did hear about it, yes. Yes, you heard about it. Yeah, okay, so very good, very good. So, okay, so, but of course it is not nothing, it is just a model, yes? It is just a model because what we wanted to achieve is to show firefighters that going in a building is not the only option you have. That you can think of other options. And at first we introduced this quadrant model as something that we had all types of tactics going in, the interior offensive attack, put out the fire from the interior, or if that doesn't work, we try to prevent fire spread, and we call that a defensive exterior. So there were two new ones, to prevent fire spread inside, or to put out the fire from outside. Yes or no? Well, so we introduced them as rather new, but they weren't in fact very new. It was only new that the mindset could be changed, that when you arrive at a structure fire, you have to think, what kind of a tactic am I going to apply? And it depends on the goal that you want to achieve. But of course there was a lot of firefighters that said, okay, this is very nice. Somebody who is sitting behind the desk in the office probably thought this out, because how in hell are we going to do this? How are we going to put out the fire from outside? Of course, when we have a working fire with flames outside and the windows are open, we can put a stream from outside into the flames. But if the building is closed, how are we going to do that? So this was one of the main reasons to do a lot of research, to find out ways how to do this especially. In the meanwhile, we saw also that the fires had changed, and that was something that we learned from all the research that was done by the UL, because we were following UL, and we also saw that it was necessary to do some research here. And the funny thing is that one of the first things we did in that quadrant was that one of the fire regions wanted to buy new fire engines, and they asked me, Ricardo, can you cool gases with calves? Of course I didn't know, but I said, okay, let's find out. Let's do some research into that. I'm not going to bother you with the results of that. Maybe a little bit of it later on, but because of course we did the research and the supplier was not very happy with the results, so we went to court, and yeah, you know, probably just yeah, that kind of. But it was the first time that the Dutch Fire Service did research into a subject by itself. And until then, it was always the suppliers that told us some kind of story, which we had to believe. That is probably the change that we made there. So, how do we do the research? Because when I became a professor, one thing was clear. You know, I started reading the research that was done in UL, and I thought that it was a very good example for me, because I believe in connection between firefighters and research and scientists. Because everything we do should be transferable to the firefighters. We do it for them. They have to work safely. They have to have the most effective methods to work. So we do two things: the participative practical research, we call it. So we we involve as many firefighters as possible in the research. They do the actual experiments. We involve them. They can discuss everything. So that's what we do. And the second thing is that we learned that you have to combine different kinds of research. So what we do is we do not only experiments, but we combine it with real case studies, with data, and fire investigation. So all these things together give the result that we want to have. And that's what we try to do, and we already did that, but of course I want more. That's always the case. Second, so this is about the situation that was probably 4 or 5 years ago in the Netherlands. And maybe interesting to know if other countries recognize it, because these are beliefs, myths, I call them sometimes. There were a lot of myths and I believe them too, so nobody to blame, but this is what firefighters in the Netherlands thought. So the first, for example, we had it yesterday, we saw a presentation about that. Can you put out a fire from outside? Can you do that? Who says yes? Yes? Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah, okay. So we wouldn't do that, you know. In the Netherlands, we would not do that. We believe that you would push the fire inside. So we learned from UL that is not the case, but still we had a lot of problems explaining that it is not the case. So I explain all these beliefs by they are unvalidated experiences. Firefighters see something happening, they believe that this is what happens, they like telling stories about fires to each other, and that is how these unvalidated beliefs become knowledge. Of course, wrong knowledge, but okay. So this is one of them. The ventilation, I did it a lot of times. Who does it still? When you are in a warehouse fire, firefighters go in, come out, they say, oh, it's too hot. What are you going to do? Are you going to smash the windows? Holes in the roof? Nobody? Oh yes, okay, so, okay, well, it's just a dot. They don't do it anymore either now, but some of them. But okay, so I did it many times, and I really believed that I was saving the building, and after reading the reports, I was thinking, which building did I save, you know? Did I ever go in? Because our goal was, get rid of the smoke, get rid of the heat, and then you can go in again. And I started realizing that, at least in the fires where I was in, we never went in again. Never. So, of course, there are exceptions, but this is one of them. The internal attack. Gas cooling. Firefighters in the Netherlands think when you do an internal attack, gas cooling. No matter what. Silence. Everybody, oh, you think it's, I'm not taking you, but okay, maybe we come into that later. Then, another discussion about high pressure versus low pressure. I didn't know the difference when I was an officer, but of course people like Simco and Hans, they explained me that there is a difference. I found out that there is, both nozzles have the same pressure. So 7 bars, yes, I learned it yesterday, 7 bars is on the nozzle, the pressure. It's the same for high pressure and low pressure. And the firefighters in the Netherlands, they think that they can put every fire out with high pressure hose lines, 90 millimeters, 90 to 125 liters per minute. And the problem is that it is probably almost true. Because in the Netherlands, most of the fires are home fires, and most of the home fires, 80%, stay either in the object of origin or in the room of origin. And if the room is not too big, you need only one high pressure hose line. So their experience says that they can put out the fire with a high pressure hose line. And if you have the CAFs, which has a little bit more water, you can even do more. So this is the opinion in the Netherlands, so it is very difficult. So when I start telling them about, maybe you should sometimes use a low pressure hose line, or you have need a little bit more water, they are looking at me like, from what planet are you? Because our experience says that we can always put out the fire with a high pressure hose line. So this discussion is a very important one, and that's why we are also working on it. Of course, this is a discussion that we don't have an answer for, but it is, do you want to start first with the rescue or first put out the fire? It depends, yes, it depends. Yeah. So, but these kind of things, oh yeah, PPV is also, some Dutch fire services came to Sweden and they learned how to use ventilators. And then there are some of my colleagues there who came to Sweden and learned how to use the ventilator. But you know that a lot of firefighters then think like, okay, you can put the ventilator anywhere. Because we saw it in Sweden, it works always. It always works. So, and that is not the case. So we are waiting for what is going to happen. But I tell them now, please don't do it until you know what you're doing. Because there is a new, of course, also from UL, a research where it says like first water on the fire and then put on the ventilator, and that is what I also tell them. First control the fire. So this kind of things, beliefs, facts, discussions are in the Netherlands. Do you recognize them? A little bit? Yeah? Still awake? Yeah? Okay. Oh, good. So this, of course I don't have all the answers, but okay. So then what we see in the Netherlands is we started collecting cases. So we are looking at movies, we are collecting real fires, talking to firefighters, asking them why did you do this, what was the effect, do we understand why the effect was there. And there is a strange thing happening. Because people tell me, Ricardo, the books are not correct. The Fire Service Academy writes books and the theory is not good. So I started reading the books, but the theory is very good. Only we don't use the theory. When we arrive at a fire, we do something else. And I was thinking, what is happening? What happens to us? It even overcome me. Like, so I think there are some things working. You see here some examples of people that are doing things that are not recognizing signals because they were on routine. Yes? One of the first things that is happening to you when you are under stress is that your situational awareness is decreasing. So I think that the adrenaline helps us to do things we forget to apply our knowledge. We return to our, what they call reptile brain, and we do what our instinct says, and not what our knowledge tells us to do. And it has to do with time pressure. Remember them. I will be back on that. The second thing, do you agree with that? Is it recognizable also for you? Yeah? I think that every firefighter recognizes that he sometimes thinks like, what did I do afterwards? Yes? Second thing is that I think that experience is replacing our knowledge. So we think that all the fires are like most fires. True or not true? Every home, most of the dwelling fires are very small, so you can open the door, you go in with your high pressure. Sometimes you only need a cup of water or size 45. Put out the fire, so next time it will be probably the same. There is even research telling us that this is how it works. And the strange thing is that we in the fire service, we accepted that this is how it works. We make a mental model based on our experience, and we do what we did last time, and if it doesn't work, we change our tactics. That is what research shows us. And we accepted that it is like that. And I can't accept that, because it is not going to work. Of course, it is going to work most of the time, but not always. Then, I found out that there's something wrong in our organization. And that maybe also applies for you. So we have a lot of theory. But I think we are missing the translation between theory and practice. So, of course, it's very nice that I can see that there is a white smoke, and there is yellow flames, and there is a door open, and etc. But what kind of action has to follow when I see this? We don't explain that. There is no perspective, there is no action in the books. The books tell you the theory. So the instructors, they tell the people what to do in practice. But the instructors, they had all these beliefs. So how are we going to change this? So I think that we have to take more care in translating theory into practice and teach the practice to the firefighters and not bother them with a lot of theory. And the last one is, I don't know how it is in your country, but in the Netherlands we have exercises. Every week there is an exercise, and we look in our community somewhere, there is a nice building, and we exercise. And firefighters make a scenario, a fire scenario, and these scenarios are probably not correct, because they are also made by the beliefs that we have. So we are somehow reinforcing our thoughts all the time, and we are even training them. So this is what I think is, so we need a system approach to change that, which also involves not only theory, but also the translation from theory to practice, and the way our instructors teach these new theory, this practice. And this is a nice one. Of course, firefighters always tell you, we have a lot of experience. And that is very, very difficult for me, because you know, if you want to do research, you need money. Yeah? So, and when I make a proposal for research, and I go to the politicians and ask them for money, and I say, this is what I want to research, they say, Ricardo, why do you need research? Because your firefighters, they have so much experience, and experience is much more important than theory. So I made a calculation. So these are some provinces. So the average firefighter in the Netherlands has maybe between 0 and 2 structure fires a year. Doesn't say anything about the magnitude of the structure fire, but this is what it is. And some provinces, maybe in the bigger cities, they have maybe 5, yes, at maximum. So if you subtract the number of cases where it is only a very small fire, then the number of substantial fires are very, very little. So you don't, the experience that you do is the fires that occur most. So that says something about the amount of experience. So I think that we should leave the thought that we can base our tactics on experience. In the Netherlands, of course. Of course, you have very big fire services and more experience, but if your situation is the same as in the Netherlands, you should approach it differently, I think. This is a nice one, because this also made me think, and I will share this story with you, because this is a fire in my own fire region, and I was not there, but when I saw it on the internet, I thought like, oh wow, this is going wrong. Because what did I do? 2 firefighters went in, they were looking for the fire, they had a high pressure hose line with them. They went in, they went up to the first floor, couldn't find the fire. Firefighters outside thought, let's help them. So they smashed the windows and they put the ventilator in front of the front door. Luckily they came out alive. But I spoke to them and they said, Ricardo, all of a sudden everything went black. We had to run, we left the hose line, we ran out. This building burned down, of course, you know, nicely between the other buildings. And firefighters think, we did not do anything wrong. Because, you know, if we didn't do anything, then it would also burn down. Yes, so we did a good job. I would also think. Yeah, a few years ago, I would also think. So this is a story I tell, and then of course in the Netherlands it is like this, you know. If you can find the black swan, you do, yes? So you are going to send WhatsApps and emails to the professor. Professor, you were wrong, because we have our case, and this is this case. So they said, so we smashed the windows, and I said, and what happened? Oh, smashed the windows, water, fire out, building still there. And then I thought, like, how is it possible, you know? Is UL wrong, or, you know, well, maybe they're wrong. But then, of course, nowadays I ask them, that's very interesting. But tell me, can you explain to me why it went well? Why did it went well? So, and if you hear the story about this, so they knew where the fire was. They put a low pressure hose line ready in front of the door. The fire was next to the door. They smashed the window, door open, water on the fire out. It is possible. So I think, and that's for me is the conclusion is that, but the problem is they think that they can do it next time again. But if they don't understand that it went well because the fire was close to the door, they had enough water, and they knew where it was, then probably next time they have a situation like that. So that is why I say knowledge is only, experience is only knowledge if you understand it. And otherwise you can throw it away. So this is one of the sentences that I use to promote learning from fires. And then, maybe the swearing, but this is how we look at it now. So here's a lot of knowledge, theoretical knowledge. And I think that with all the research that we did in the past year, we did not add much to the theory of fires. Who has more than one book about fires? About fire engineering? 3? 3? Okay, every book starts with diffusion flames, calculations for radiation, regimes, that kind of thing. So I think that all the books have the same content. Maybe written down a little bit different, but there is not much more knowledge about that. So suppose that this is all the knowledge that we have. Of course, the experiments are still necessary because it is about how to apply the knowledge in practice. And that is what we lack. That is what we don't have. And if I look at it, then I think like this. And you can, of course, start moving if you disagree. Yes? So this is all the knowledge we have. And I think that a lot of that knowledge is not applicable in practice. If you want to put out the fire, you have a call. Structure fire, you are standing in front of the building. How much of that knowledge are you going to use? I think that it is only, now, let's say, I don't know, 20%. And with that 20%, maybe you can put out all the fires, and maybe 10% of that knowledge you can use, you can put out 90% of the fires. Agree or not? Yes? John, you agree? Yeah? Okay. Oh, I'm happy to hear it. Continue, okay. So and you know, so this is very important because this is, I'm not sure, of course, but this is how I think about it now. And I make the connection with another problem that we have. I shouldn't say volunteer, but we have firefighters. Firefighters have a restricted time that they can spend on training. And of course, we had the discussions. We were frustrated, I was also frustrated, about how we were not able to bring all our knowledge to all the firefighters so that they could have effectively, efficiently and safely put out fires. But if it is true that they can put out 90% of the fires with only a little bit of knowledge, then it is our task, I think, to translate the knowledge to that what they really need. And that is necessary because we are never going to be able to put all the knowledge that we have to all the firefighters. So from that perspective, I'm looking at, so this was all introduction. This introduction because, of course, that is to make it for me a little bit easier to make it simple. So we had a lot of fire. We had a lot of research projects. I'm not going to tell you everything about it, but I will pick a few of them that are important for that refreshed view. The first one is this. We were lucky because we could also set fire to 6 houses, real houses in the Netherlands. And our goal was to find out how fire would develop within these houses, how the tenability of the inhabitants would be in these houses, and how the effectiveness of the smoke alarms would be. And we did these experiments, and the first thing was that our conclusion about the fire spread was, it depends, yes, because there are so many factors influencing the development of that fire in the house. So we could, and that's what is nice on this, you know, because we could confirm things that were also found by UL. And that would be really very nice if we can have a worldwide community that we can sometimes repeat each other's experiments and find the same things. What we also find was that the smoke spread was like that. That if you close the doors inside the house, the tenability would increase. Again, a confirmation of earlier found results. But for the Netherlands, of course, this was very important because now I can say that it doesn't matter what is the ideal arrival time. Because all the time the politicians ask me, Ricardo, can you tell us what is the ideal arrival time? And I say, I don't know. As quickly as possible. And if not, then at least I cannot explain what is the best time based on these kind of fire development tests. But what is important is that we also found that tenability also depends. So that means that, for example, people that were lying on the floor, even in the fire room, survived very long time. People that were in the bedroom behind the closed doors maybe survived 45 minutes in that house. Which for me says that it is a probability. Yes, a probability. When does somebody die? We don't know. There is always a probability that somebody survives. It depends on a lot of factors, and there is always a probability that somebody dies. Which means that if we would arrive 10 seconds later, we cannot say that 10 seconds later the person inside would be dead. Yes? It's a probability. Yeah? That is important. This report is available in English. Another one. This is, you see here some big fires. We have in the Netherlands, we have a fire inspection. And they inspected one fire, which was a big chemical plant. And one of their conclusions was that the fire officers in that big incident made a mess of it. They did not act according to what they was taught. So, and that was interesting, because when you look into the books about command and control, there is almost nothing about how to do command and control. The only thing I was taught was every time there is a new officer, there is somebody higher, yes? So it is like a pyramid, the hierarchical structure. But how to do it? It was taught by other officers during my practical courses. So there is nothing about command and control in our books. So I said, okay, but I want to do then a research. What is the best type of incident command? So we had two things. The first thing started with studying all the literature that is available on human factors. And you will be surprised how old it is. There is so many research and so many knowledge about how we will react under stress. What adrenaline does with our situation awareness, time compression, tunnel vision. It's almost impossible. I hope you recognize, somebody recognize that you were at a fire and afterwards you think like, hey, it was very difficult when I had my plan to change the plan. Maybe you saw the Grenfell Tower inquiries. Example, fire officer, of course a very, very bad fire, an impossible fire, but he thought that he could put out the fire. And I have many more examples for my colleagues that if you have a plan in the beginning, something strange happens, it is almost impossible. Tunnel vision. So the first thing we found was a lot of things about decision making under pressure, and that the only reaction that fire service has is write more protocols. Protocols that nobody can remember at the moment supreme. Protocols that you maybe can drill a little bit, but the fact is that still you remain human. This is human. This is not a cognitive thing. This is a neurobiological thing. So something happens in your body which you cannot control. Very important, because that's what I'm doing now. I think that the human factor is always very much underestimated within the fire service, and I put it on the agenda, and all of a sudden fire officers, crew commanders tell me stories about what they experienced, and it fits in that. So one of the things you should do maybe is to create a safety net, and that safety net that should consist of some innovative ideas. When I was a young officer, I was always told that, for example, when I would stand and just watch, I was a bad officer. Yes? So we reintroduced that kind of officer. An officer that just looks. When the situation gets complicated, you can call for your second officer, and he will do nothing except watching over your shoulder and look if you saw everything. Some fire services have a safety officer, like Peter McBride. They have in Ottawa, they have a safety officer who does nothing except watching. And you can call for them. Other things that we consider is time compression. After 20 minutes, if you don't say we have it under control, after 20 minutes, automatically your assistance will be sent by the control room. That kind of assistances we are thinking of, and we are trying that out now with 60 fire officers who are had a renewed training, and in 3 fire regions we call it the Action Research Project. So they are the researchers, and they have to tell us what their experiences are. But that is the safety net. So we are not perfect, and we don't have to be perfect. And for me, take a little bit more time, especially if you're an officer, but also for the crew commanders. Take a little bit more time, and you will probably reduce these effects. Then we did, of course, in all the 4 quadrants, we did some research. The biggest research was in the offensive outside attack of exterior, and the offensive interior attack. First, the offensive exterior attack. So what we did was, we did 5 big experiments in different kind of buildings. Concrete warehouse building, and some container buildings with smaller rooms. And our thought was, we find some kind of technique with which we can, at the place where we arrive, at the front door, we can put it through the wall, and we extinguish the fire somewhere in the building. And we did it with a cold cutter, Cobra. We used the fog nails. We had our low pressure hose lines, high pressure, and we have what we call a distribution nozzle. It is a steel pipe with some kind of head on it which turns around, and it gives like a spray like this. And we had the CAFs, yes, because 6 fire regions in the Netherlands, they have the CAFs. So we did it, and amazingly, the conclusion must be, of course, there is more detailed conclusion, but the most important conclusion was that if you use the technique in the room where the fire is, it doesn't matter what technique, because you can always put it out, if you have enough water, of course. If there is enough cooling capacity available. As soon as you put it somewhere through a window or through the wall or a door in a room where the fire is not, then you have to be lucky. Sometimes it will, sometimes it will not. It's a little bit like this. So we were very disappointed, because we thought that all these kind of new innovative equipment could help us put out the fire on just the place where we arrived. But that was not always true. But for me it was very important, because then I started thinking maybe we had a wrong thought in our mind, because I was always taught to do a 360-degree size up. But I didn't do it in practice, because I said it's not possible. It's not always possible. So because it is not always possible, I don't do it anymore. Yes? So that's how firefighters sometimes think. Most of the firefighters just arrive in front of the building, open the front door, go in, look for the fire from inside. So now what we refreshed is that hey, what happened to us? This is not what we were taught. We were taught to do that size up. So do the size up is one of the most important conclusions from this big research. And of course we have learned something about the application of all these kind of innovative means, and they are not useless. But that is in the report. So here we did some, of course I already told you about the research that we did in the 6 dwellings. So the tenability, it depends, fire development, it depends. And there was another research that we did. That was in the smoke gas cooling, or the gas cooling, or the smoke cooling, I don't know anymore. Because I think that you told me that I had to say gas cooling, yes? No. Or no? Smoke cooling, okay, smoke cooling. I get them confused. So Peter, please help us. Literacy, it is very important, you know, because I don't know, I'm confused about that. But we know what we mean about that, yes? So you go in, and so the question was, can we cool the gases or the smoke with gas? And that set me to an idea, because we were doing measurements. Maybe I will show you the picture later on. I will show you a picture later. So gas cooling distance is one of the things that we also found out in that kind of research. And of course, yes, how can it be, you know, we follow international, all the international research that has been done about ventilation, about transitional attack, about wind-driven fires, and about the applications of ventilators. So all together, all this research together will distillate into that refresh view. But there was another thing. So when you look, so there is a big discussion in the Netherlands about, and I feel, did I put it? Yeah, SAF. That is, we call it RSTV, but I think internationally it is SAF. It is it is who invented it? Who invented it? Sean. Okay, yeah. So all the firefighters in the Netherlands, they were taught this kind of theory, that they had to look at the smoke and at the air track and at the flames and at temperature, etc. And very interesting, of course, but most of them said, we are not able to apply it. It is too difficult. The normal firefighters. Ricardo, can't you make something more easy? Well, I said, well, I'm just a professor, so I have a community of practice of all kind of fire instructors, and I said to them, can't we make it a little bit easier for the simple firefighter, the normal firefighter? Yes, and they came up with the fire triangle, because they say, okay, you know, so air track is oxygen, temperature, side of it, and smoke is fuel. And the discussion about white smoke, black smoke, it doesn't matter, it is all fuel. So, and that the stupid thing is that this fire triangle is in every book. So how come that firefighters go into the building and leave the door open? And how come that we forgot to do that? Because when I was in my course for firefighter, we didn't, of course at that time we didn't bring the hose, yes? But I was sent in. They said, go in, go to the left, find the fire. And I went in and I closed all the doors. Went in, the door open, oh, no fire, the door closed. That's how we did it. Are there old firefighters that still remember? So at some time, we decided that we needed a hose. And because the hose was in the door opening, the door could not be closed anymore. So if it cannot be closed, then leave it open. And in 90% of the cases, nothing went wrong, because 90% of the fires are small. So it doesn't matter whether you leave the door open. But then we forgot about this. So I'm glad that we can get back to that fire triangle for the normal firefighter. Of course, we can make it deeper. Nothing is, of course, that model is not wrong. Nothing is wrong. We didn't teach them the wrong things. But some of them were too complicated to apply. by normal firefighters. The second thing is about how much water do I need? There is a lot of literature about that. And especially Paul Grimwood wrote, also in his last book, wrote a lot about that. But so to explain a firefighter, what can you do with your nozzle, with your 19 millimeter high pressure hose line, or what can you do with your low pressure with 400 liters a minute? So we calculated the cooling capacity a little bit, but of course you have to do a lot of assumptions. And the same thing is that in the Netherlands, I don't know in your country, but in the Netherlands nobody's ever thought about cooling capacity. Firefighters and fire officers. You would not like to know how many times I ordered for extra engines while there was a fire which I never could have put out. But I didn't know. I thought like, okay, let's put water on it, and sometimes you are lucky. Yes, that's what. So we didn't. So when I asked our fire academy, our dean, and I asked him, how come that it is not in the books? And he said, well, it's very simple. We only put in the books where the experts agree on. And the experts did not agree on this. So we did not put it in the books. So this is very easy, yes? So it is very important that we, as experts, yes, we agree on some things. And it depends is very nice, but sometimes we have to make a choice, yes? And in this thing we made a choice and we say, okay, we make the assumption that there is an average firefighter. And Karel is very optimistic. Yes, you are very optimistic. Eh? In Brussels they have very good firefighters, so they are very effective in making the nice droplets and the good the cooling capacity of the Brussels firefighter is a lot better than the average firefighter in the Netherlands. So we and there is also experts that say, the efficiency of the average firefighter cooling capacity maybe 10%. Okay, so we went to 50%. So we say, suppose that the efficiency of the firefighter, the average firefighter in the Netherlands is 50%, then with the high pressure you can cool about 2.5 megawatts, which is about a sofa, a small sofa. So if the fire is bigger, the potential fire is bigger than the sofa, you need more than a high pressure hose. And this is a part of the refresh view. Of course, they also need some guidelines for the potential heat release rate. And that it is still a little bit difficult because I have, of course, to put in how much oxygen can be supplied to the fire. Because, so what is the efficiency of the fire? And we came up with about the sofa is about 2.5 megawatts, and here we just use as rules of thumb what is in the books. 1/4 of a megawatt per square meter for the average dwelling. Yes? So all these things together, I will leave this for a while and will lead to this refreshed view. So the first thing is, and you remember, take time, which they don't do at this moment. And of course, all the firefighters say to me, Ricardo, we can have discussions. You know, the people are waiting for us, and the casualties inside. And I said, count to 10, and see how long it takes to count to 10. Yes, and can you see what you can do when you count to 10? You can at least breathe a few times, look again, look if your perspective of the fire is still the same. That's the first. And the second one is you can take time to do a thorough size-up. And think outside. So if I can get to the fire from outside, you do it. But you need to know where it is from outside. Use your TIC, your thermal image camera, which they don't do, because the normal procedure in the Netherlands would be like this. Arrive at the scene, get your high pressure hose line, take your TIC with you, go inside. So who is going to do the reconnaissance? Yeah, from inside, but then it's too late. So we do an exterior attack. That is a result of that offensive exterior attack research. And then, it is very easy. Firefighting is very easy, because if you know where the fire is, and you can get to it from outside, and you have enough water, you can put it out. True or not true? Yes, so that's what everyone. So and then I say, so if one of the answers is no, defensive. And now maybe some people are shaking a little bit, yes? Okay. Carl also, you know, discussions. Yes, but Ricardo, where is inside the interior attack? Of course, we don't put it away. It probably is for most of the buildings still the most important tactic. But I want firefighters to think outside, because even if you have a dwelling fire, some of these fires come from outside in. So if you can put that dwelling fire in the rear out from outside, why don't do it? Why go in and try to find the fire with all the risks? And you get dirty, you have to clean yourself, and you know, all the chemical substances on your skin or whatever. So if you can do it from outside, do it from outside. So what I try to do is not to erase the offensive interior attack, but to make people think from outside. And then, of course, if you have that predictable outcome, you choose for a defensive strategy, unless you have a small building or a small room or whatever, and you choose for the inside attack, for the go inside, yes? And then you know that if you go inside, that you have to take into account the potential energy of the fire and what kind of a house line you have to take. And we have some rules of thumb. Are there countries where you have these rules of thumb? Is it something in your books? Nobody? Yeah. Yes, you have it, yes. In Ottawa also? Yeah, you see, yeah. So that's why we need to exchange knowledge all over the world. And I was, a few weeks ago, I was in Minsk. And I asked people in Minsk, of course, people in Minsk, they live there in their, you know, there's a dictator, they have borders, so they didn't go to Sweden. Let's say like that. So I asked them, what kind of a house do you use? Do you have high pressure house? Yes, of course we have. Yes, of course we have. But Ricardo, this is a stupid question. Small fire, high pressure, big fire, low pressure, you know, small fire, little water, big fire, lot of water. So that is how they think. So they have this kind of stuff. Okay. So, and then of course, this is very important, I think, when you go in, to realize always that you have that fire triangle. What I did is, and I will not go into that much because you can read it maybe in the book, I thought that I could make it even more simple. Because in my opinion there is only 4 scenarios. It is the scenario you arrive at a fire, at a building, and you see nothing. And there was somebody here, I thought I saw him come in, who said, if you see nothing, it means nothing, yes? So this is not easy. This is a difficult one. So working outside fire, flames come out. Smoke come out, yes? So if I would be able to make some kind of procedure for all these 4 cases, then maybe we would have the translation that we were looking for. But it was even more simple, because even in these 4 scenarios, it depends. So you cannot say that there is one recipe, but there are ingredients. And these ingredients, door control, take care of your door. It is the fire triangle. Oxygen, the fire grows. Put water on the fire. Gas cooling distance is one of the things that I didn't go in, but when we did the experiments with the calves, we saw that when you give a shot or a pulse, yes, temperature drops. A few seconds later, temperature go up. Yes, so you need to go on cooling if you are advancing towards the fire. So, and then when I read the books, I don't know where it comes from, but they say that there is a limited depth that you can cool the gases unless you put water on the fire. That is what we forgot. So everybody was taught to cool the gases, but not to what extent. And that is something that we want to research now. To what extent can you can you cool it? But for now, we say, okay, keep in mind, a small room, you can cool the gases if you cannot put water on the fire. But if you can put water on the fire, do it. And then, of course, the rules of thumb for the cooling capacity. So if you go in, if you decide to go in, take into account these ingredients. And of course, transitional attack for the working fires. So I think that, Stefan, the time is up, so I cannot go into the new research that we do. Maybe one minute, maybe I can say a few things, because smoke explosions. We talked about it yesterday. We see in the Netherlands, we see a lot of smoke explosions in warehouses, in industrial buildings. We don't know what they originate from exactly, and we also don't know how to predict them and what we can do about it. So that is one of the major issues now. But yesterday I learned that in Ottawa, so if you want to know more, Ottawa already has done something, so I'm very curious to know what they found, because really this is, for me, I see it as some kind of Russian roulette. Most of the time we are not in the building or just outside, or we did not arrive yet when it occurs, but sometimes firefighters are inside. This for me, it's a nightmare, this. And the second thing is, we are going to do a very big research next year, starting next year, into smoke spread in apartment buildings, but because it seems that this happens more often. We don't know exactly why, because when I was a fire officer, we never evacuated buildings. Everybody stayed in place, we put out the fire and we ventilated. And nowadays it seems that the smoke is everywhere. So one explanation is that the new materials, the modern materials, they produce about 10 times as much smoke as the old materials. But there must also be something with pressure, probably because this smoke spreads through all the building. And it means that now firefighters, when they arrive at such a scene, they have to evacuate the whole building, which is rather impossible. So we have it now maybe 10 times already in the past year, and this is really not nice. So we want to know what we can do about it. And let me say then, we think that firefighters also contribute to the smoke spread. So we think that in our tactics again needs to be something added to prevent this. So thank you very much for listening to me. And well, maybe I was, wait a minute, I will go faster, because here is, let me see, it doesn't want to go exactly where I want to go, because there is, in the end, there is a QR code. Yeah, there he is. So if you want to read about this in English, because we publish everything that is of importance in English, so we can share that knowledge with you. So if you want to know more, then you can find all the reports on the website.